Hello, this is Patrick with Dallas Hockey Hangout, coming to you after a 4-1 Stars victory over the LA Kings at home. Take a sip of water here to start because I got a lot to say, ladies and gentlemen. Pretty exciting game, was it not? A get-right game for Dallas. The Stars really needed this game, and it's tough to need a game in December, but you never want to see like doubt creep in to players and, for that matter, like the fans. Like, Dallas has been a wagon, which is one of my all-time favorite hockey phrases. I'm going to inject more hockey lingo into these podcasts. I don't care how stupid I sound. But Dallas had been a wagon up until their, two losses in a row, not a streak. They didn't look the best against Minnesota, and then they looked not very good against Florida. So, I mean, Dallas sort of needed a get-right game to find their offense, find their defense, find their confidence again. And it really set up well for them to be playing the Kings, because while the Kings have, they're not bad, 14-9-9. I believe I saw watching their game against the Flames. I believe it was just the other night, but that it goes to OT again, that they've played in the most OT games in the league right now with a lot. I'm not entirely sure, but I know it's close to 10, if not more than that. They lose to the Flames, which are arguably one of the worst teams in the league. They were heavily outshot in that game against the Flames, and I kind of expected a similar trend, especially they were at Crypto Arena. Boy, tell you what. Yes, Crypto Arena. Wasn't sure. And yeah, they were pretty flat. And I think watching that game, I thought, Dallas is I expected them to win, and I expected them to get right. I also expected a pretty defensive game. Glenn Gulton, the Stars head coach, called the Kings the best defensive team in the league in his post-game press conference, which they've always been good defensively. I think it fits their style, and they have a lot of good defensive two-way talent. Obviously, Zay Kopitar retiring at the end of the year. He's as consummate pro and Selke trophy winner, so he embodies that team, and it makes sense that they would model the game around it. But I thought it was interesting to look at Kemper's numbers on the year. He's 10, 6, and 6. His goals against is 2.21, save percentage almost 92%. So yeah, pretty interesting. I can't wait to talk about that play with Mikko. But yeah, we'll launch into it. How should we view the Stars team? I think that it was good to see them have the jump. They've been notably tired looking lately. I'm not making excuses for them, but Glenn Gulton did note the team's energy many times over the last several games, and it's clear the schedule is wearing on the team. How we view this team for this game, they needed this win. They needed to stop the losing and just regain their confidence. Like, all the best teams lose their confidence at some point. You expect to be great, and when you're good, you start wondering why, and the players start gripping their sticks a little tighter, and you get over passitis. And then conversely, it kind of looks like maybe what you got from the Kings, and that, yeah, they were thinking shoot, but I didn't see a ton of playmaking from the Kings. I thought largely that Dallas did pretty good defensively, keeping them to the outside. We'll touch on Casey DeSmith's game, but he hung them in the game in the first period when the Kings really had it going. So I don't have it on my rundown here, but I guess we'll launch into how about that trade of Quinn Hughes to the Wild? I think the reason I would include that, how should we view this team? Well, I think now we have to start looking at, it's going to be a 3-team race for the number 1 and number 2 seeds in the division. I'm not going to sit here and complain a ton about the seeding, because it is what it is. They can't change it. They're not going to change it anytime soon. If they made that change, the NHL, that is, I bet we wouldn't see that take effect for a hot minute. And what I'm alluding to for the audience is, the top number 1 seed. Most of the time it's been the Central, and then the next 2 teams in the Central Division play each other in the opening round. And well, if that was to pan out today, then it would be Dallas and Minnesota in the first round. And obviously Minnesota has a much better team this year. And then you add Quinn Hughes. It's going to be a really, really interesting race. I'm glad Dallas keeps banking points, because as much as everyone probably will worry about that seeding, I'm not worried about that as much. We've seen plenty of teams go on to win from lower seeds. I don't think Dallas is going to run into Edmonton, but I wouldn't rule them out. That Jari for Skinner trade is exciting, delicious. It seems like the national perspective on that was just that they were trading one guy for a similar guy. I have seen Jari play many times, but I wouldn't look at him like I look at Skinner, and that Skinner's got talent, but can't always translate that on the ice. That said, I believe Skinner came in and he was playing really well for Edmonton, actually, leading up to the trade. So, and then back to the Quinn Hughes trade. I chose a really bad time to not do a podcast. But yeah, the Quinn Hughes trade is just, man, I am so fascinated by that. Minnesota needed, I think if you look at their team, they need another offensive punch, but I think obviously Quinn's going to bring that. And you just happen to be getting in a defensive player. He scores in his first game with the Wild. I know this is a Dallas Stars podcast, but all of that with the framing of how should we view this team, I think we should be viewing this team as it's going to be an arms race for the number 1 seed. I think a lot of people would expect Dallas to make some trades at the trade deadline, if not before. I did think the timing of all of this was super interesting in the middle of December. You know, Quinn Hughes had the leverage. He's an all-star player. He's basically told Vancouver he doesn't want to resign. I don't blame him at all. They're a dumpster fire. And then, of course, they win their first game after they traded him. But then against the Hughes brothers in New Jersey, I wish I had got a chance to watch that game. I bet it would have been pretty exciting. At least one Hughes brother with Jack Hughes out. But yeah, Dallas is ramping up. And then you have the Olympic break. I wonder how much that is factoring into these trades as well, trying to get a hold ahead of what might be a swell or push to, acquire talent. Dallas, when they made that trade for Granlund and Ceci, that was a little earlier. And then you get the trade deadline acquisition of Moose, which I'm really surprised that I didn't start the podcast with the Moose Blast. But I mean, the Moose is loose. The Moose is loose. People, check the whiteboard. He's loose. We can't contain him. He was unbelievable tonight. So let's just move into a whole Mikko Rantanen segment, because his collision with Darcy Kuemper was, pretty divisive. I'm absolutely anti-clickbait, but I'm sure the question is being asked around the league. And for people that don't watch Mikko Rantanen on a regular basis, is Mikko Rantanen a dirty player? Absolutely, unequivocally, I don't think he is. The suspension and the penalty minutes this year are not helping the case, but for anyone that's seeing this collision with Kuemper, I'd love to see whether or not they also noted that he went to go check on Kuemper, that Mikko won a Stanley Cup with Darcy Kuemper and Colorado in 2022. That's brother for life energy, I'm sure. I don't think Mikko's trying to take out one of his friends. That's just, I firmly, vehemently disagree with anyone that would suggest that. Going back to the play, Brian Dumoulin, the Kings number 2, gives him a push. And I think largely Darcy Kuemper jetted out. He's trying to make a save, whatever. But he jets out outside the crease. Mikko Rantanen is not in the crease, especially at the point of contact. And I think, you get people that want to freeze frame and do all that. Look, he's elbow to the head. Well, I mean, he's shoved in for 1. 2, he's not going through the crease. 3, Darcy Kuemper was 30 to 40% outside of his crease. And moreover, lunged out there, and I felt like he almost did as much of the collision as Mikko did. And I mean, Mikko's a big guy. So he's, as the phrase is common in hockey, Mikko Rantanen is also entitled to his ice there. I don't think he went in there looking for contact. And then furthermore, on that point, they disallow the goal. I was fine with that. Like, if you're going to lean any way and that were to happen to your team, you would want them leaning towards, hey, maybe we're not just going to award a goal if the goalie gets, in a collision. But for all the people saying that Mikko Rantanen is a dirty player, I would contend that if he was a dirty player and the refs saw it that way, that they would have also levied a penalty on him, and they did not. I've seen plenty of times in which they also hand out a penalty there, and I was personally fine with the fact that they didn't, call the goal there. That's fine. That said, I didn't think that, my personal opinion is that Kemper put himself into that position and essentially caused the contact, or Dumoulin, depending on how you view it, and that goal should have stood. But I can understand why it did not. I don't believe he's a dirty player, and I also just think he's a moose and he's loose, and he's going to cause havoc and collisions, and it won't be the first or last time that we see Mikko Rantanen run into a goalie. It's just, look at Jamie Benn. That it's the same sort of attitude. Jamie has always been a net front guy, willing to get dirty, but the thousands of times I've looked at Ben look at his skates and confirm that he's not in the crease. These players know what they're doing. They've been in the league a long time. They know the rules. Mikko's not just going to go and plow a goalie, let alone his friend. So I'm going to put that to bed. But that leads right into the moose is loose, people. That pass he had to Duchene for the first goal was unbelievable. Bad defense from the Kings, but they're a good defensive team. So I think, they get puck watching, and that's what happens with great players is everyone sees Moose with the puck and is saying, oh, he's probably going to do something, which he did. And he sent a laser to Duchene cutting backdoor, and, Duchene gets that game time goal. Man, just what a freaking laser pass from him. That is an all-world pass from Mikko Rantanen. Incredible skill. And then essentially it's kind of 4-on-1. We'll call it 3-on-1, 2-on-1, whatever. I took a screenshot on my Twitter if you guys are curious, but there's 4 people in the screen, in the frame, all looking at Mikko Rantanen, and he just absolutely embarrasses Kevin Fiala. That, I think it didn't help for them that they had I believe that was Fiala. I don't think it helped for the Kings that they had a forward back, because that little chip to himself to the inside into the slot, and for him to rip it 5-hole on Forsberg, who I thought largely played pretty well for LA when he relieved Kemper. What a freaking goal. That is a goal scorer's goal, and it was the exclamation point on one of the best games you'll see from one player. Certainly in any of the Stars games this year, but I think you can make a pretty easy case for the NHL. When the Moose is loose, he affects all aspects of play, and he's just got so much dang skill, particularly on the back end. So that pass coming on the forehand was a little rare for him. So yeah, number 1 star, far and above, Mikko Rantanen. Incredible goal, incredible pass. He is +2 on the night, golden assist, almost plays 20 minutes. Really, really great game from him. Matt Duchene, 2nd star, incredible goal for him. And that, it's obviously his game is slowly coming back. I heard his pregame interview, and he noted that the first game back was really tough, but he felt like the last few he was really up to speed and fine. I think Stars fans probably have a higher bar for him given how great he was last season, and it did feel like this is one of the first game where you can look at Matt Duchene's play and say he's back. So yeah, second star for Duchene. He showed the speed, he showed the puck handling, he shows the finish. Really great to see him back. Second star for Matt Duchene. I won't do this a ton, but I'm going to have a 3A and 3B for the third star. 3A will give to Oscar Beck, and the game winner. He's physical. He gets to the dirty areas. He's so great defensively. It was really telling to hear Glenn Gullison's post-game quotes and say, I believe his phrasing was, you guys had asked me if I was surprised by anyone coming in here. And he specifically mentioned Oscar Beck and how reliable of a player he is. And obviously physically, defensively, that was his second goal, but, he does so much more. I think, the injury early in the season obviously set him back a little bit. But I mean, look, Oscar he played less than 10 minutes. So it's not like they need him, but I thought his goal was big and he earned a star. But also I really wanted to give Casey DeSmith credit. First off, let's touch on the goal he gave up. It's not good that it happened that way, but also with the way it went right to him, that was as much on Miro Heiskanen as it was DeSmith, because I think genuinely DeSmith thought he was going to take it. And then you can kind of tell from Miro's body language, the way he skated right to the bench. Miro was very upset with himself. I thought really that was Miro's way of saying that was partly on him as well, because Miro is, as many times as me personally, I've spoken to him, but he's done media. Miro is not a blame teammates guy. He is always looking internally, and I would love to see, maybe we'll find his post game, but I got the sense that he understood that there was some responsibility there. Now that said, I think DeSmith probably should have just, closed it, just gotten the face off and done it again. But I think largely my initial reaction was DeSmith saw an option or opportunity for them to get a big clear, which would have killed off a pretty significant amount of that 5-on-3. So Dallas did good to, finish that off. And, that is largely a footnote on this game because of how great Dallas was the rest of the game. But, if you take that blunder out of it, I thought DeSmith was really, really solid. He made 27 saves on 28 shots. I mean, anytime you give up one goal, that's awesome. And I thought he really hung Dallas in the first period, made several key saves. Rebound control was pretty good. And when it wasn't, I just thought his scramble mode was on. LA I didn't think they had the best chances in the game, but the first 30 minutes of it, if Dallas didn't have Casey DeSmith playing like he did, I think there's a pretty strong chance they get behind 2-0, and against a defensive team like LA, that could have been it. That could have been church. 3B will give it to DeSmith. I want to touch on Matt Duchene just for another hot minute. He was so valuable to the Stars last season. He led the team in points in the regular season. And I think in his first 2 seasons here, I think he would tell you probably didn't have the best playoffs. So maybe his injury might be a blessing in disguise, in that it gave him an opportunity to view, the game from a different point of view. I know that he talked about his struggles with coming back from the concussion. And me personally, I can't say I've ever had a concussion, but in my times sports writing and covering teams and athletes, they affect players in so many different ways. And the science on it is still not like 100%. I mean, team doctors are still kind of split on, medicine and light, sound. I'm really curious to see. I would love to know, maybe it's already been out there, but about how Duchene's recovery went, if he had to truly, lower the stimuli and let his brain recover that way. He was out for a while, so I wouldn't be surprised if he had to have some, like I could see no phones or no screens for a couple weeks. Like the brain is obviously the most important organ. So there's a debate, actually. Is the brain more important than the heart? That's a good question. But yeah, just you never know with concussions. And there have been players that have had, I mean, man, Sidney Crosby's a great example. He's dealt with concussion issues for a while, and that's probably limited. He's probably lost 100 plus games due to hits to the head. There was that hot minute in the NHL where everyone's kind of saying like, why are we letting people beat up on the star player of the NHL? And I do think that how Crosby was being treated and roughed up, I do think that that had something to do with the cracking down of penalties and roughness, and why you maybe don't see as much fighting in the league as much anymore. A lot more skill players, less goons. But I don't believe in that word goon also because it's such a negative connotation, and hockey's such a team family sport. I think, you know, on the topic of fights, look at Jamie Benn's fight against Florida. I can't remember who was with or who that player was that hit him beforehand, but I mean, there's an instance in which the fight is more than Jamie Benn is angry or trying to make a statement, quote unquote. Like, he knows the team needs energy. That was a statement by him to his team, but in a Jamie way. It's not like he's going rah rah. You got like he's, you know, skating off the ice, doing some pump up thing, any of that. No, he lets us play and physicality do the talking. So I'm happy the Stars still have him as the captain because that energy shift was needed. It didn't pay off, but it was needed in that Florida game. So yeah, and recording a little late today. So we'll just kind of do a couple quick hitters. The no goal by Ben. I loved Gullison's response in the post game. If you guys haven't heard that, please go look for it. But Gullison asked Jamie whether or not he thought that should have been a goal and whether or not he pushed, I believe it was Forsberg's pad. The NHL rule says you can't push the puck and the pad across the goal line. When I saw it live, I didn't think that would be a goal. And then the quote from Galton via Jamie, he said, "Hey, what'd you think on that goal? Did you push it across?" And Jamie said something to the effect of, "Yes, really hard." So they didn't challenge. Also, quick hitter on Goldson, they asked him what his view was of that Rantanen play with Kemper. And he said that if it had been a different point of the game, that they would have strongly considered challenging there. And to me, it was a little validating from my perspective because I really didn't think that it was goalie interference. I thought Kemper was out of his crease, and I thought Dumoulin pushed Rantanen in. I thought that was pretty clear cut as far as the rule is concerned. Rantanen's entitled to his ice. He's allowed to skate through. He didn't extend his elbow or he's trying to make a big hit. So it would have been really interesting to see. I bet Dallas wouldn't have won that just based on how the NHL does things, but it would have been really interesting to see. So quick note on Niels Lundqvist coming back. He played 13 minutes, not a ton, but they need Niels. They need Niels to be a consistent part of this defensive core. And he had a big hit on someone I couldn't see. I'm dying to rewatch it, but man, he lit someone up on along the far boards or along the bench side boards late in the third that, for a guy of his size, I thought that was really impressive. And then also just along the physicality lines, Justin Ritzkovian, this guy, I'm going to make the comparison. My wife disagreed with me, but I think he might be the second coming of Antoine Roussel in a good way, not the penalties, because I don't think you can mention Antoine Roussel without penalties, but I think Ritzkovian, he's got that grit that they need. He's not afraid of things, and he can come up with a big goal. He's got speed. He's got skill. If someone tried to trade for him this year at the trade deadline, I hope Dallas hangs on to him because I think it's clear they have something there with him. So love to see his tenacity and snarl kind of blossom before our eyes, so to speak. And they're absolutely going to need that in the playoffs. I feel like, obviously, the narrative around this team is 1% more. And Goldson was noting, obviously, coming over from Edmonton, just about how Dallas needed to be more physical this year. And I think Rich Kobian is just such a perfect example of that. So love to see him doing his thing. And then, we'll just do a quick hitter Star Sharks preview. Dallas is coming off a win over the Sharks that was December 5th. And that, given the talent on both sides, I really expected it to be more high event. I mean, Dallas had 24 shots, San Jose 17. I thought both teams really looked tired that game. The weekend game, and I don't know, I really expected that to be more high event. So Dallas won that 4-1. No points from Macklin or Will Smith. I would expect to see John Klingberg in this one because of, man, you guys, if you get a chance, first off, you got to subscribe to ESPN Plus and get the NHL package. Secondly, the Pittsburgh Penguins are an issue. They blew a 5-1 lead to the Sharks in the third period. And John Klingberg, it was a big part of that. And he gets the OT winner. Super happy for Klingberg and his play with the Sharks and to find a home. He's obviously had not the best exit from the Stars. So it's just really great to see him back in the league. He had some injury issues for a couple years. And then, it's really good to see him playing with the Sharks. The Sharks are a really likable team until they're not, right? Until they're in the playoffs and getting dirty, but they're several years away. But I am rooting for the Sharks to make the playoffs. I think that would be really good for hockey, and it just is really good to see different blood, in the playoffs. I think it would be really interesting to see if Anaheim can maintain their prowess this year. I think because Askarov for San Jose, their goalie he's legit. I mean, let's look at his numbers. Yaroslav, oh man, he gives good interview too. He's 11-8-1 on the season. Yeah, his numbers have started to fall, but largely he is a big reason the Sharks are where they are at in this season. I mean, yes, everyone wants to talk about Celebrini and Will Smith, but San Jose isn't even within sniffing distance of the playoffs with Askarov. So be interesting to see if they get him again, given how relatively poor he played. So in that game, that is, against the Stars. So I expect a different game against the Sharks. I bet it's going to be more high event. Again, I got a chance to see Sharks Bruins game a few weeks ago in SAP Center, the Shark Tank. And, it gets lit in there. There's a lot of energy. The fans are excited. They've got, the core, following there. It's a really unique atmosphere. The colors are great. I mean, you've got storied history. I think the only thing that San Jose is missing is a Stanley Cup for them to, kind of be on the Stars level as far as team you may not think about when you think about hockey, but has always been kind of in the mix somehow. Now, obviously, they've been rebuilding for several years. They're on the way up quickly, that's for sure. I would expect to see a much higher event game. That said, Dallas is finding its defensive game again, so curious to see if that repeats as well. So really excited to see that game. The back-to-back I would probably expect to see in net and then them play DeSmith against Anaheim, especially it was Jake in net against Anaheim earlier this year when they lost 7-5. So that was my sense as I was looking at the schedule. So I would expect to see Jake against the Sharks and Casey DeSmith the next night. He's so good on those second night of a back-to-back DeSmith, and Jake had done so well over this last run that, it was a tough game against Minnesota, but Florida, I didn't think he was the issue against Florida. I just thought Dallas just didn't have it across the board. So that's how I'll be evaluating is Jake's bounce back game. And I want to see Dallas's defensive play continue to get better. I don't think I really worry about the offense because they have so much skill, but when you get shut out for the first time 4-0, I think everyone was kind of thinking about that. And And Dallas did what it needed to offensively in this game. They were borderline dominant offensively the last 30 minutes of the game. So, and obviously we know what they can do with their power play. So my advice to the San Jose Sharks, don't take penalties, because in their game against, the Stars 10 days ago or so, they took 3. So, and Dallas scored on one of them. So if they take 3 again and Dallas scores on one of them, I don't think it's going to work out in the Sharks' favor. So we'll see. I am curious. I've been pretty busy lately, but I did see that there was some injuries on the Sharks standpoint. I'm going to have to do a live look here, because I hope just Stars fans get to see Celebrini play, because I think he might be hurt. Let's see here. I mean, I'll just touch on that. The fact that he was so willing to fight in that game against the Penguins and stick up for the hit on what? Oh, it's Will Smith that's hurt, I believe, because he kind of, got injured there, and it was Celebrini that stepped in. So I think you don't want your best player and they're fighting, but I mean, I think the instinct kicks in. And then I saw some quotes about Celebrini saying that, this is the type of stuff that you can't quantify. And yeah, you really can't quantify heart. He shouldn't be fighting, and technically I don't think he threw any gloves off punches, but I just love that fight from a 19-year-old kid, instinctually going in to defend his teammates. So Sharks are enemies on Thursday, but I think largely they're one of the more rootable teams in the NHL right now. So should be an exciting game. Curious to see if Dallas can keep its little run against San Jose going. So we'll call it here. If you guys have any questions or comments, DallasHockeyHangout@gmail.com. I did want to give a quick, we'll call it shout out to a guy I met at the game tonight. His name is Ryan. He had some really unique custom jerseys, and he's got a marketing business, and I'll do a little bit more research on, maybe give his, business name. And oh, here we go. I got him right here. Ryan Totka, Totka. So yeah, he's got a good thing going, and he's got a lot of creativity. Stars fan is just saw that he did something with Stankoven, and just love meeting cool people at games, and going to continue to shout out. So if you guys see me, please holler at me. Would love to chat. So like and subscribe. No, I'm just kidding. I really don't care about likes or anything. I just hope that people find me slightly entertaining and informative, and, see that my passion for hockey and the Stars is unmatched, frankly. So hopefully to deliver more passion, and I can't wait to do some playoff pods, and you guys might see a little blood curdling passion out of me. I got that way when I saw that hit with Rantanen on Kemper. I really thought that Kemper torpedoed himself into Rantanen. So it's pretty frustrating to see that narrative of Rantanen develop. But, there's going to be a lot of haters out there. So we'll call it DallasHockeyHangout@gmail.com. Please reach out. Can't wait to talk to you guys next time. Have a good night.